Something from earlier in the week made me kind of angry, so I figured I might just spin it into a bit of a rant video. I hope you guys are okay with that. Enjoy! One thing I'm afraid of when it comes to Canadian politics is Canada becoming somewhat like Germany in the way of what we do with the refugees and how we see taking in refugees. It really didn't hit me till last night. I watched a Croton T video, and he was talking about the, I guess, anti-SJW or skeptic community. And he said that a lot of people in North America just focus on social justice and all of those kinds of things. We really didn't focus on the issues that were close to what he experiences on a daily basis. And thinking about it, yeah, we don't experience what they experience over in Europe at all. We're much farther away from the migrants and other such things. And I mean, we hear about that stuff on the radio and on TV, but we don't actually see it. But it may soon be our problem. Well, Canada's problem specifically. It's just the way that the media portrays people who aren't of the certain progressive mindset that they want. For example, let's look at the reporting of the Quebec shooter in the mosque attacks earlier this week. An article reading, "Suspect in mosque shooting, a moderate conservative turned extremist, say friends, classmates." Okay, hold on. So it makes it sound like any moderate conservative could suddenly become an extremist from this title. And I feel that that's reaching quite a bit. And it makes all the conservatives look terrible. What if I were to say, hey, liberal turned into Antifa rioter? I mean, though it is true, it's very misleading. It's like I'm trying to say, oh, hey, he's a liberal, so he'll be likely to be an Antifa, right? That's not how things work. But nonetheless, CBC goes with that and writes a full article about it. In a lot of the article, they paint Alexandre Bissonnette, the shooter, as a moderate conservative, which is kind of scary if you think about it. They kind of jump on the whole idea that he became radicalized in an extremely short period of time. But that's not really the case. And they also kind of give him attributes that are more common to the more moderate conservative that would never think of violence. It's almost like they think that conservative ideas will necessarily mean violence. At least that's how the article sounds to me. If you were to think that every single moderate conservative could suddenly just snap and become a terrorist in a moment, you would be afraid of anybody who identified with any sort of conservative ideas. It seems that they're painting the picture that a lot of people like to paint Muslims with, and they're applying it to moderate conservatives, which is very scary, and I disagree with painting either of these people with a broad brush like that. But more on the article. Apparently Bissonnette opposed gun control and was pro-Israel, which, being pro-Israel, I guess, is kind of a conservative standpoint, but yeah, let's not get into the Israel-Palestine debate. But they also stated that he tended to avoid things like immigration and religion, which is kind of interesting because those are the things that could be motivations for why he did this shooting. There were some telltale signs of him becoming more radicalized and maybe his mental health going into decline. He started withdrawing from his peers as his views got more and more extreme, which is what tends to happen. And I think we should pay attention to these people because they are the ones at a greater risk for committing very dangerous things to themselves or others. Apparently, Bissonnette took part in an informal political discussion group that was more on the conservative end. But he stopped going because his views were not as moderate as theirs, I guess. The thing that makes me nervous about this article is they then start to try and make some commentary on what he believed politically, especially in today's leaders it looks like they're trying to make a connection to say, hey, he believes in this, therefore these people are bad. Because in big bold letters in the middle of the article, it says, Trump, Le Pen, political idols. It makes both Trump and Le Pen look a lot more radical than they actually are. And it also makes their supporters look extremely radical, like their supporters would all go out and shoot 6 people, which is just not true. Yes, Trump and Le Pen are very nationalistic, but I really don't think that they're as far right as people want them to be. They then go on to explain that Trump enjoys the support of the alt-right, a loosely defined political movement that includes white nationalists and white supremacists. This isn't the part that I have a problem with. It's the next paragraph that really gets me. The alt-right is known, too, for its army of online trolls who circulate racist memes and virulent attacks on perceived opponents. Problem with that is people cry out abuse, harassment, racism, Nazism on people who disagree with them. And the passerby isn't going to take more of a look than to see, wow, that person is yelling Nazi at that person. That person must be horrible. And then they'll think, wow, these people must be alt-right and white supremacists, which puts people in the middle, like myself, in a bit of hot water, we'll say. I appreciate jokes and memes that are kind of funny, and those memes can have a racial component to them, but we're making fun of the fact that people actually do believe these things. We think that they are so deplorable and just such awful thoughts that we laugh at them. It's kind of a way of coping. They also start to say that Alexandre Bissonnette is an anti-feminist, which really puts me in hot water again. Or people like me, I guess. Anybody in that sort of community here on YouTube is going to get lumped in mosque shooter category, which I very much worry. The Facebook group that he was on, or commented on regularly, said that he was very much a fan of the word feminazi, and their definition of feminazi in the article is a little bit off. A lot off, actually. They say that feminazi is an alt-right slang for those who advocate women's rights. Holy shit, is that wrong? Feminazi is a term used, I mean, yes, it is thrown around a lot, but its intention is to say that they are overstepping women's rights, and they are trying to become authoritative. They're trying to dictate what other people think and believe, which isn't their place. People who I would consider feminazis would be people like Steve Shives, who just loves to wish violence on people who don't agree with his opinion because they are pro-Nazis, which is completely untrue. You can tell that this article is written from a feminist viewpoint just by that alone. They think that feminazi means just average feminist or average person who thinks that women should have equal rights to men. That is not okay. That is completely conflating the terms. And when you conflate terms like that, you immediately radicalize, in the eyes of the people, a certain sect of the population, which could be a very large part of the population. It's ruling by fear. You are afraid of the people who are actually very moderate, and it gives you license to do things like punch Nazis because suddenly people who just don't agree with the way that feminists specifically do things. The thing that scares me about this rhetoric is that it's allowing the prime minister to keep doing his virtue signaling and saying that we'll let all these refugees in. And that's where ISIS likes to send their agents of terror, is through the refugees. I hate to say it, but it's just true. And this is where I think that Canada is starting to become Germany. Trudeau has come out and said that he was proud to take in 40,000 refugees, which is all fine and dandy, but I still think that they need to be vetted. I'm not 100% sure on whether they were vetted or how well they were vetted. But the fact that it seems like Trudeau just wants to keep taking in more and more and more, it looks exactly like Germany and what they did. And if you look at Germany, especially the things that Kraut and T says in his videos about Islam and that sort of thing, when you import so many of a certain culture en masse, you're going to create these pockets of a subculture in your country. And suddenly they start to rule and govern themselves, regardless of whether the law says that they can do so or not. That's where it gets dangerous. Why do you think there's so much crime committed by migrants and immigrants in Germany? It's for the fact that they keep their culture. I definitely agree that we should try and help people who are driven from their homes in war and in turmoil. But if they want to come here and not go to somewhere like Saudi Arabia, who has tons of room in their refugee camps, they have to follow our rules. They have to conform to our society. And that means they're not allowed to rape women, rape children, kill people, stone people, burn people for insulting Islam. Sharia law cannot happen here. That is just an incompatible system with our current system. If you allow that, you will allow that community so much power over the rest of us. And that advantage is they can defend their religion with violence. Whereas we, if we are not Muslim, can't defend ourselves because we can't say, we'll use Sharia law, because that only applies to Muslims. So I think in another article that the CBC put out, the people have it right from 10 years ago when they said, hey, we need to actually vet people. But not only that, we need to tell them that, hey, stoning people and burning them alive is not okay, and that we really like Christmas trees. Okay, that was kind of funny. They actually had a thing saying that they would tell immigrants and refugees that, hey, we really like Christmas trees because this, and this reason. The town that did have this policy was called Hérouville, and it's in Quebec, of course. The funny thing is the CBC and this article absolutely chastises the makers of this procedure. I think it is fair to criticize a few of the places where that whole idea is not so great. Like, why do we need to explain why Christmas trees are important? And I think there is a few other condescending and not so great policies in that whole action. But I think on a whole, you do need to tell these people, these refugees, these whatever, that you are entering a new society. Yeah, it does sound condescending. Yeah, it does sound like you're being an asshole, but some of these people don't understand that, and they keep living their lives business as usual. And I think if we're going to actually make the distinction and acknowledge that they come from somewhere else, we need to recognize that their culture has pros and cons, which is a good thing. And I think that we could accept pieces of their culture, like the positive aspects, absolutely. But that's what Canada's diversity is about to me, is we take all of the good things from the cultures and we try to borrow it as much as the bad as possible. And in this case, the bad comes in stonings and honor killings, etc., etc. And opening our borders just willy-nilly is going to allow these people to have that power, bring those things into the country. And if they don't learn that it's not okay, they're going to keep doing it. But the thing I want to point out about the article is that they were saying that the town of Hérouville were degenerates for implementing such a practice or such a legislation, which I think is completely untrue. And I think people need to look at potentially maybe even implementing a measure like this, but not as stringent or maybe not as ignorant. But I think that the left is, well, let's just say, against that. They want to make anything that goes against the refugees or goes against a protected group to be completely degenerate. And I don't think there's room for that. I think you actually need to look at things on a case-to-case basis. And not just look at them as, oh, hey, this group's oppressed. Well, guess what? Free stuff. Or you can't be punished. Again, not punishing them is what people did in Germany. And if you want a good example of what happens when you let this go like Germany did, I'll leave a link to Kraut and T's video in the description. I couldn't put it in any sort of way that would have the impact that Kraut and T did. I guess the thing that scares me is that Justin Trudeau does say that he is a feminist, and I'm not saying that all feminists are inherently bad, but feminism does have a problem where they do tend to protect people, like the extreme Islamists, by saying, but not all of them are like that. Well, yeah, we understand that, but they do come from a society where those things are okay. And you can't just give them a free pass because they're not in their country. I think that we shouldn't let these groups of immigrants just isolate themselves among themselves, because that is where things brew, because then they don't learn the language properly. They're unable to communicate. And when they're unable to communicate, they can't get along with people very well. And if the majority of people don't interact with people from this country that are nice and who are extremely good people, they're still going to be afraid of the unknown. Because that whole race, I guess, well, not race, we'll say the whole country, the people from these countries are going to be very unknown to them. And they don't know what the signs are. If this person is going to be somebody who doesn't follow our rules and just wants to keep going and do whatever they want with women and children, we don't know that. But if we start talking to these people, and if they engage in our communities and we invite them into our communities, they will feel more welcome and will feel safer around each other. I don't think people of the Muslim faith should be afraid that someone's going to come and shoot up their mosque. And I don't think that we should be afraid that a extreme Islamist is going to blow themselves up in our church, our grocery store, our mall, parliament, whatever. And I think the best way is just to normalize each other, I guess. And for us as a people to come together, and for maybe some of their better values to rub off on us. It could improve us, and we definitely want our good values to rub off on them. I know this is a bit ranty, and it's gone on for quite a while. But I feel that it's very important to talk about these things, because a lot of people in government, and especially people on the left that are just citizens, day-to-day people, are very afraid to talk about this. They think that they're going to be considered a racist or something if they say, well, no, we shouldn't just accept these people with open arms. And I think people need to hear that, yes, we need to look out for the bad people, and we need to tell them that our societies are very different. And since you're coming to our society, even though, yes, we are doing you a favor and a charity, we aren't expecting much in return for what we're going to give you. But what we do expect is for you to adapt and conform to what we as a society do, at least to enough of an extent where we're not getting killed by each other. I think as a society, we do have somewhat of a responsibility to interact with these people, make them feel welcome, because if we interact with them, they will become more comfortable with us, and we will also be more comfortable with them. It'll make for a more harmonious society that will almost come to a middle ground when it comes to values. And that's why I worry so much about the negative values coming in. But hey, this is the end of the video. Tell me what you think about my opinions in the comments down below. Please remember to like and subscribe, especially if you liked the video. And as always, have a great day, bits.